The sky darkened early that afternoon as Maya Johnson checked the weather alert on her phone for the 5th time. The worst blizzard in 20 years was heading straight for their small Colorado town, and Maya wasn't taking any chances. As a nurse and a single mom to her 8-year-old son Elijah, she had learned to plan ahead. "Elijah, honey, grab another blanket from the closet," Maya called as she counted the canned goods she'd stacked in the pantry. She'd stopped at the grocery store on her way home from her shift at Mountain View Hospital, fighting through crowds of panicked shoppers to get the essentials. Elijah appeared in the kitchen doorway, dragging his favorite blue blanket. "Mom, is the snow monster really coming?" he asked, his brown eyes wide with a mix of fear and excitement. Maya smiled, putting down the can of soup she'd been holding. "It's not a monster, baby. Just a very big snowstorm." She knelt down to his level. "But we're ready for it, right? We've got food, water, flashlights, and each other." Outside their modest 2-bedroom home, the wind had started to howl, and the first fat snowflakes were beginning to fall. Maya had worked hard for this house, taking extra shifts and pinching pennies since Elijah's father had walked out 5 years ago. It wasn't much. The roof leaked in one corner and the heating system was temperamental, but it was theirs. "Can I make hot chocolate?" Elijah asked, already moving toward the cabinet where they kept the cocoa powder. "Good idea. Let's enjoy it while we still have power." Maya helped him reach the mugs, watching as he carefully measured the chocolate powder. She'd taught him to be independent from an early age, knowing that sometimes her shifts meant he had to handle things on his own. As they settled on the couch with their steaming mugs, Maya pulled Elijah close. Outside, the snow was falling faster now, already coating the ground in white. The weatherman on TV spoke gravely about road closures and potential power outages. "If the lights go out, we'll have an adventure," Maya told her son. "We'll build a fort and tell ghost stories with the flashlight." Elijah grinned, revealing the gap where he'd lost a tooth last week. "Can we roast marshmallows in the fireplace?" "You bet," Maya promised, though she silently worried about how long their firewood would last if the power went out. She'd been meaning to buy more but hadn't found the extra money in this month's tight budget. They spent the next hour playing board games as the storm intensified. The wind rattled the windows and the snow piled higher, transforming their world into a white blur. Maya had just won their 3rd round of Connect 4 when her phone rang. The hospital's number flashed on the screen. "Maya, it's Dr. Rivera," said the tired voice when she answered. "I hate to ask this, but we've got multiple car accidents coming in, and we're severely understaffed because of the storm. Is there any way you could make it in?" Maya glanced at Elijah, then at the window where the snow was now coming down in thick sheets. "I don't know if I can drive in this, Rita. It looks really bad out there." "I understand," Dr. Rivera said, "but we're desperate. If there's any safe way for you to make it, we need all hands on deck." After hanging up, Maya paced the living room. She had never turned down a call from the hospital before. People's lives could be at stake, but Elijah was her priority and the roads looked treacherous. "What's wrong, Mom?" Elijah asked, sensing her worry. "The hospital needs my help," Maya explained. "There are people hurt because of accidents in the snow." Elijah considered this. "You should go help them," he said with the simple clarity of children. "You always say helping people is important." Maya felt a surge of pride. "I can't leave you alone." Though, after a moment's thought, she called her neighbor, Mrs. Chen. The elderly woman lived alone and had often watched Elijah in emergencies. "I'm not going anywhere in this weather," Mrs. Chen chuckled when Maya called. "Send Elijah over. We'll bake cookies and wait out the storm together." 20 minutes later, Maya had bundled Elijah in his warmest clothes, packed an overnight bag, and walked him the short distance to Mrs. Chen's house, fighting against the wind that threatened to knock them over. "Be good," Maya said, hugging Elijah tightly at Mrs. Chen's door. "I'll come get you as soon as I can." "Go save people, Mom," he replied, already distracted by Mrs. Chen's promise of cookie dough and hot cocoa. Back at home, Maya changed into her scrubs and pulled on her heaviest winter coat, boots, and gloves. She hesitated before grabbing her father's old snow chains from the garage. He had taught her how to put them on when she was 16, and though she hadn't used them in years, she was grateful for the lesson now. Lying on her back in the snow, she attached the chains to her tires, her fingers growing numb despite her gloves. Her old SUV wasn't fancy, another hand-me-down from her father, but it was sturdy and had good clearance for snow. As she finally pulled out of her driveway, Maya could barely see through the blizzard. The wipers fought a losing battle against the snow and the road had all but disappeared. She drove slowly, gripping the steering wheel with white knuckles, grateful for the chains that bit into the snow and gave her traction. The town was eerily deserted. Normally busy streets were empty, with abandoned cars half buried in snowdrifts. Maya's usually 15-minute drive to the hospital had already taken 30 minutes and she was only halfway there. She turned onto the highway, where conditions were even worse. The wind howled around her car, rocking it side to side. Maya thought about turning back, but the image of the overwhelmed hospital staff kept her going. Just a few more miles, that's when she saw it. Faint red lights blinking through the curtain of snow. At first, she thought she was imagining things. But as she drew closer, she realized it was hazard lights from a car that had slid off the road into a shallow ditch. Maya slowed to a stop, her nurse's instincts taking over. Someone could be hurt. She couldn't just drive by. Pulling as far off the road as she dared, Maya turned on her own hazard lights and zipped her coat up to her chin. The moment she stepped outside, the full force of the blizzard hit her. The wind cut through her layers like ice, and the snow pelted her face, making it hard to breathe. She trudged through snow that reached above her knees, fighting for each step toward the stranded vehicle. It was a small sedan, unsuited for this weather, almost completely covered in snow on one side where it had slid into the ditch. "Hello," Maya called, but her voice was swallowed by the howling wind. She knocked on the driver's window, wiping away snow to peer inside. What she saw made her heart jump. A man was slumped in the driver's seat, his face pale, a thin layer of snow covering his dark hair and shoulders, where it had blown in through a partially open window that appeared to be stuck. In the back seat, a small girl with dark braids was wrapped in a coat too big for her, eyes wide with fear. Maya knocked harder, and the little girl looked up. Relief flooded her face at the sight of another person. She leaned forward and unlocked the door. "My dad won't wake up," the girl said as Maya yanked the door open. He went outside to push the car, then he came back and fell asleep. Maya's training kicked in. She climbed into the car, immediately checking the man's pulse. It was there, but slow. His skin was dangerously cold. Hypothermia had set in. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Maya asked the girl, keeping her voice calm while she assessed the situation. "Lily," the child whispered. "My dad's name is David. We were driving to Denver to our new house. I'm Maya, I'm a nurse, and I'm going to help your dad, okay?" She shook the man gently. "David? David, can you hear me?" His eyes fluttered open briefly, unfocused. "Lily," he murmured before closing them again. The car's interior was freezing. The engine had died, probably out of gas from running the heater. Maya made a quick decision. They couldn't stay here, and the hospital was still too far in these conditions. "Lily, we need to get your dad to my car. It's warm, and I can take you both somewhere safe." Maya pulled off her glove and held the back of her hand against the girl's cheek. Cold, but not dangerously so. "Are you hurt anywhere?" Lily shook her head. "Good girl. I need you to be very brave and help me with your dad. Can you do that?" With Lily carrying their small backpack, Maya managed to get David's arm around her shoulders. He was semi-conscious now, mumbling incoherently as she half-dragged him through the snow toward her SUV. Lily trudged behind, struggling through the deep snow, but keeping pace. By the time they reached Maya's car, all three were covered in snow, and Maya's arms burned from supporting David's weight. With one final effort, she helped him into the passenger seat, cranked up the heat, and lifted Lily into the back. As Maya pulled back onto the highway, she glanced at her passengers. The man was still barely conscious, his breathing shallow. The little girl's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror, full of trust despite the terror of the situation. Maya made a split-second decision. The hospital was still miles away, but her house was closer. In this storm, with David's condition, closer was better. "Change of plans," she said firmly, turning the car around with careful precision. "We're going to my home. I can take care of your dad there until the storm passes." As she drove back through the blinding snow, Maya sent a silent apology to Dr. Rivera and the hospital staff. Tonight, these two strangers needed her more. Maya's tires fought through the thick snow as she carefully steered toward home. In the passenger seat, David drifted in and out of consciousness, his breathing shallow. Lily sat quietly in the back, her small hands clutching the too large backpack on her lap. "Is my daddy going to be okay?" Lily finally asked, her voice barely audible above the howling wind and the strain of the engine. Maya glanced in the rearview mirror and forced a reassuring smile. Yes, honey. He's very cold right now, but I'm going to help him get warm. That's my job at the hospital, helping people get better. The usual 5-minute drive from the main road to Maya's house took nearly 20. When they finally pulled into her driveway, the snow had climbed halfway up the front door. Maya turned to Lily, whose eyes were wide with exhaustion and fear. I need your help again, brave girl. Can you carry the backpack and follow me closely? We need to get your daddy inside fast. Lily nodded, clutching the bag tighter. Getting David from the car to the house was even harder than before. The wind had picked up, turning the snow into stinging needles against their faces. David was more alert now, but still couldn't walk without support. Maya half carried, half dragged him through the deep snow, keeping one eye on Lily struggling behind them. When they finally stumbled through the front door, the blessed warmth of the house enveloped them. Maya hadn't been gone long enough for the heat to fade, and she silently thanked whatever luck had kept their power on. The couch, Maya directed, guiding David to the living room. He collapsed onto it, his lips tinged with blue, his dark hair crusted with ice. Lily, can you sit in that chair for a minute? I need to help your dad. Maya's nursing training took over. She quickly assessed David's condition, moderate hypothermia, but no frostbite that she could see. His clothes were soaked through from the snow and his body temperature was dangerously low. David, can you hear me? Maya gently patted his cheek. His eyes fluttered open, more focused than before. We need to get you out of these wet clothes. Can you help me? He nodded weakly. With Maya's assistance, David managed to remove his wet coat, sweater, and jeans. Maya wrapped him in the blankets she and Elijah had piled on the couch earlier, tucking them tightly around his shivering form. Where's Lily? David's teeth chattered as he spoke his first coherent words. She's right here, Maya assured him, gesturing to the chair where the little girl sat watching them with solemn eyes. She's okay. You both need to get warm. Maya turned her attention to Lily, helping her out of her wet snowsuit and boots. Unlike her father, Lily's inner clothes were mostly dry, protected by her well-insulated outerwear. Are you hungry? Maya asked, wrapping a fluffy blanket around Lily's shoulders. The girl nodded, her eyes never leaving her father. Maya moved quickly to the kitchen, putting water on to boil for hot tea and soup. She returned with a glass of orange juice for David. Small sips, she instructed, helping him hold the glass. Your body needs sugar. As David drank, his eyes cleared further, focusing on Maya for the first time. You saved us, he said, his voice hoarse. Just happened to be driving by, Maya replied, checking his pulse again. It was stronger now. What were you doing out in a storm like this? David closed his eyes briefly. Moving to Denver. We left Chicago yesterday morning. The storm wasn't supposed to hit until tomorrow, but it came early. GPS took us on a shortcut through the mountains. Car skidded. Couldn't get traction. Well, you're safe now, Maya said, patting his blanket-covered shoulder. Rest while I make some soup. In the kitchen, Maya prepared chicken noodle soup from a can, adding extra noodles to stretch it. She hadn't planned on feeding 2 extra people during the storm. As she stirred, Lily wandered in, still wrapped in her blanket. Can I help? The girl asked, her voice small but steady. Maya smiled. Sure. You can put these crackers in a bowl. As they worked side by side, Maya learned that Lily was 7 years old and had been excited about moving to Colorado until the scary drive through the mountains. Her father had gotten a new job at a tech company in Denver after losing his previous position in Chicago. Where's your mom? Maya asked gently, stirring the soup. Heaven, Lily replied matter-of-factly. She got sick last year. That's why we're moving. Dad says we need a fresh start. Maya's heart squeezed. I'm sorry, honey. That must be really hard. Lily nodded, carefully arranging crackers in a perfect circle around the bowl's edge. Dad cries sometimes when he thinks I'm sleeping. Maya carried the soup tray into the living room, Lily following with the crackers. David was sitting up now, some color returning to his face. Feeling better? Maya asked, setting the tray on the coffee table. Much, he replied, reaching for his daughter who climbed up beside him on the couch. Thank you doesn't seem enough. While they ate, Maya explained that her son Elijah was at the neighbor's house and that she had been heading to work when she found them. David told her more about their move, how he'd packed up their life in Chicago after being laid off, how this job in Denver was their chance to start over after his wife's death. Lily was born in Chicago, he said, his arm around his daughter. Leaving was hard, but there were too many memories. The lights flickered once, twice, then went out, plunging the house into sudden darkness. Lily gasped, pressing closer to her father. "It's okay," Maya said calmly, already reaching for the flashlight she'd left on the side table. "Just the storm knocking out power. Happens all the time up here." The beam of light cut through the darkness, illuminating their faces. Outside, the wind howled louder, rattling the windows. "I promised Elijah an adventure if the lights went out," Maya said, smiling at Lily. "Let's build a fort." Despite his weakness, David insisted on helping. Under Maya's direction, they dragged cushions and chairs together, creating a cozy tent in the middle of the living room. Maya found more flashlights and her camping lantern, which cast a warm glow inside their makeshift shelter. "This is better than our fort at home," Lily whispered, some of her fear fading as she arranged blankets on the floor. As promised to Elijah, Maya lit a small fire in the fireplace, carefully feeding it with their limited firewood. The dancing flames pushed back the chill that had begun seeping into the house without the electric heat. "You seem prepared for everything," David commented as Maya produced a deck of cards from a drawer. She shrugged, shuffling the deck. "Single mom. You learned to handle emergencies." They played Go Fish and War, the simple card games keeping Lily's mind off the howling storm outside. When the girl finally began to nod off, Maya made a comfortable bed for her in the fort. "She's resilient," Maya said softly as they watched Lily sleep. "Kids often are," David nodded, his eyes tired but clear. "Her mother died 14 months ago. Cancer. Some days I don't know how we're getting through it, but Lily, she keeps going, so I do too." In the firelight, Maya saw the grief etched in the lines of his face. "I get it. My son's father walked out when Elijah was 3. Not the same as losing someone to death, but being the only parent. It's a lot." They talked quietly as the fire burned down to embers. David told her about his wife, Anna, a kindergarten teacher who'd fought her illness until the very end. Maya shared stories about juggling nursing shifts with school pickups and the constant worry of making ends meet on a single income. "I should call Mrs. Chen," Maya remembered suddenly. "Let Elijah know we're okay." But when she tried her cell phone, there was no signal. The landline was dead too. "Storm must have knocked out the cell towers," Maya said, trying not to worry. "Mrs. Chen will take good care of him. She always does." As the temperature in the house continued to drop, Maya dug out every blanket she owned. She made David take her bed despite his protests, while she squeezed into the fort with Lily. "I'll check on you through the night," she told him. "Hypothermia can have delayed effects." True to her word, Maya woke every few hours, padding quietly to her bedroom to check David's temperature and breathing. Each time she found him sleeping soundly, his recovery progressing well. During one check, she found him awake, staring at the ceiling. "Can't sleep?" she asked, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Just thinking," he replied. "If you hadn't come along when you did." "But I did," Maya said simply. David's hand found hers in the darkness, squeezing gently. "Why were you really out in that storm? You said you were going to work, but that seemed like a bad call even for an emergency." Maya was silent for a moment. "I've never said no when they call. Single mom, remember? Can't risk my job. Can't risk people thinking I'm not reliable. So I go, even when it's dangerous." She laughed softly. "Though tonight I never made it." "You were where you needed to be," David said, his voice heavy with gratitude. When Maya returned to the fort, she found Lily awake, her small face illuminated by a flashlight. "Is my daddy okay?" she whispered. "He's fine," Maya assured her, settling back under the blankets. "Just sleeping." Lily snuggled closer. "You're nice, like my mom was." Maya's throat tightened unexpectedly. She stroked Lily's hair until the girl's breathing evened out in sleep. Outside, the storm continued to rage, but inside the darkened house, wrapped in blankets and the quiet understanding of shared struggles, the 3 strangers had found an unexpected shelter, not just from the snow, but from the storms of life that had brought them to this moment. Morning came with an eerie quiet. The howling wind that had rattled the windows all night had finally stopped. Maya opened her eyes inside the blanket fort, momentarily confused by the weight against her side until she remembered Lily, the little girl from the stranded car, The house was freezing. Maya could see her breath in the dim light filtering through the curtains. Carefully, she extracted herself from Lily's sleeping form and crawled out of the fort. The world outside her window was transformed. Snow had drifted halfway up the glass, turning the morning light blue and strange. Everything was covered in white, with no clear boundaries between her yard, the street, and her neighbors' homes. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Maya's first thought was Elijah. Was he warm enough at Mrs. Chen's? Had they lost power too? She tried her phone again. Still no signal. She built up the fire, adding the last pieces of wood from the small stack by the fireplace. The flames caught quickly, offering a circle of warmth in the cold house. That looks good. Maya turned to find David standing in the doorway, wrapped in a blanket. The blue tinge was gone from his lips and his eyes were clear. The rest had done him good. How are you feeling? Maya asked, professional concern in her voice. Like I got hit by a truck, but alive. He moved closer to the fire, holding his hands out to the heat. Thank you for what you did yesterday. For both of us. Before Maya could respond, small feet padded across the floor and Lily emerged from the fort, her hair tangled from sleep. I'm hungry, she announced, climbing onto her father's lap as he sat on the floor by the fire. Maya smiled. Hungry was good, normal. Let's see what we can find. The stove is electric, but I have a camping stove somewhere. In the kitchen, Maya dug through her emergency supplies and found the small propane stove she'd bought years ago after a different power outage. She set it up on the counter, away from anything that could catch fire, and heated water for instant oatmeal. Not exactly gourmet, she apologized as she served the steaming bowls. But it's hot. It's perfect, David said, helping Lily hold her spoon with still shaky hands. After breakfast, Maya bundled up to check on Mrs. Chen and Elijah. The snow was up to her thighs in places, making the short walk to her neighbor's house an exhausting trek. The quiet was unsettling after the constant roar of the storm. No cars, no distant voices, just the crunch of snow under her boots. Mrs. Chen answered the door with Elijah right behind her, his face lighting up at the sight of his mother. Mom, we made cookies and had hot chocolate and slept in the living room, and Mrs. Chen taught me Chinese checkers, he exclaimed, throwing his arms around her waist. We had a lovely time, Mrs. Chen said, smiling at Elijah's enthusiasm. The power is still on here. My block must be on a different grid than yours. Maya explained about finding David and Lily, keeping her voice low so Elijah wouldn't hear all the details of the rescue. They're staying with us until it's safe to travel. Would it be okay if Elijah stays with you a bit longer? Our heat is out, of course not, Mrs. Chen replied firmly. You'll all stay here where it's warm. But Elijah, who had caught enough of the conversation, had other ideas. We have people at our house? Can I meet them, please? I want to go home. Maya hesitated, looking at Mrs. Chen. The boy wants to be with his mother, Mrs. Chen said with a knowing smile. And I have plenty of firewood. Take it. My arthritis wouldn't let me split it anyway. An hour later, Maya and Elijah trudged home through the snow, pulling a small sled loaded with firewood. Maya had wrapped Elijah in layers of clothes borrowed from Mrs. Chen's grandchildren, who had left them during summer visits. Is there really a little girl at our house? Elijah asked, his words forming white clouds in the cold air. Yes, her name is Lily. She's a bit younger than you. And her dad? Is he nice? Maya thought about David, his quiet gratitude, and the way he'd looked at her in the firelight. Yes, he's nice. They're both nice. They were lost in the snow and now we're helping them until the road's clear. Elijah nodded, satisfied. Like when Tommy Henderson's family stayed with the Wilsons after their house flooded. Maya smiled at her son's simple understanding of helping neighbors. Exactly like that. When they arrived home, Maya found David had stoked the remaining embers and was trying to warm the living room. Lily sat wrapped in a blanket, looking small and uncertain. We brought reinforcements, Maya announced as Elijah bounded through the door behind her. This is my son, Elijah. The two children eyed each other warily until Elijah broke the silence. Do you like dinosaurs? I have dinosaur books in my room. Lily's face brightened slightly. I like the ones with the long necks. Brachiosaurus. I have a whole book about them, come on. Just like that, the ice was broken. The children disappeared down the hallway to Elijah's room, their voices already rising in excitement. David helped Maya bring in the firewood, his strength returning. Your son seems great, he said as they stacked logs by the fireplace. He is, Maya agreed. He's been asking for a friend to play with all winter. Throughout the day, the unlikely group fell into a comfortable routine. David proved skilled at keeping the fire going, while Maya organized their limited food supplies to last as long as possible. The children played board games, built elaborate structures with Elijah's blocks, and drew pictures at the kitchen table. By afternoon, reports began coming through on Maya's emergency radio. The blizzard had dumped over 3 feet of snow. Roads were impassable and power was out across half the county. Officials were asking everyone to stay home while plows worked around the clock to clear main roads. "Looks like you're stuck with us a bit longer," David said, listening to the broadcast. "I'm sorry to impose," Maya shook her head. "It's no imposition. Actually, it's nice having people around during a storm like this." She hesitated, then added, "It gets lonely sometimes. Just Elijah and me." As darkness fell again, they gathered in the living room, illuminated by the fire and Maya's camping lanterns. Elijah convinced everyone to play charades, resulting in fits of laughter as David tried to act out submarine while wrapped in a blanket. When it came time for bed, the children begged to sleep together in the fort. Maya relented, setting up sleeping bags side by side while David looked on with amusement. "I never thought I'd see Lily laugh like that again," he said quietly as they watched the children whisper together in their makeshift tent. "Not after her mom. Kids are amazing," Maya replied. "They carry their hurts, but they still find joy." Later, after the children had fallen asleep, Maya and David sat by the fire, sharing the last of a chocolate bar Maya had found hidden in her baking supplies. "Tell me about Denver," she said. "What's waiting for you there?" David stared into the flames. "A job. An apartment I've never seen except in pictures. No friends, no family," he sighed. "It seemed like a good idea in Chicago. A fresh start. Now I'm not so sure. Starting over is scary," Maya acknowledged. "When Tom, Elijah's father, left, I didn't know how we'd manage. But we did. You will too. What about you?" David asked. "Have you always lived here?" Maya nodded. "Born and raised. My parents passed a few years ago. Car accident. They left me this house. It needs work, but it's home." They talked long into the night, sharing stories about their children, their jobs, their dreams. David described his work as a software engineer, and how he'd lost his position when his company downsized. Maya told him about her journey through nursing school while pregnant with Elijah, and her hopes of someday becoming a nurse practitioner. When Maya yawned, David insisted she take her bed. "I've imposed enough. I'll take the couch." "You're still recovering," Maya protested. "I'm fine now, thanks to you." His hand found hers in the firelight, just as it had the night before. "Really, Maya? You've done so much." The way he said her name made her feel warm inside despite the cold house. The next morning, they awoke to the distant rumble of snowplows. The main road was being cleared, though their small street would likely remain buried for days. Over a breakfast of the last instant oatmeal packets, David cleared his throat. "Once the roads are clear, I should try to get our car towed and find a way to Denver." Maya felt a surprising pang of disappointment. She'd grown used to having them there, filling her quiet house with noise and life. Before she could respond, Elijah looked up from his bowl. "But you can't go yet. We're going to build a snow fort today." "A real one?" "Yeah," Lily chimed in. "You promised, Daddy." David glanced at Maya, a question in his eyes. She smiled. "The roads to Denver won't be clear for days anyway. You might as well stay until then." The relief on his face was obvious. "If you're sure we're not in the way—" "You're not," Maya said simply. After breakfast, they all bundled up and ventured outside. The world was blindingly white, pristine and untouched. Elijah immediately flopped backward into the snow, moving his arms and legs. "Snow angel," he shouted. Lily hesitated only a moment before joining him, giggling as the cold snow slipped down her collar. While the children began piling snow for their fort, David helped Maya dig out her front steps and a path to the street. They worked side by side, their breath forming clouds that mingled in the cold air. "I could get used to this," David said quietly, leaning on his shovel and watching the children play. Maya looked at him, at the way the morning sun caught in his dark hair, at the smile that reached his eyes for the first time since she'd met him. "So could I," she replied, and meant it. 3 days after the blizzard, Life was finding a new normal in Maya's small house. The power had flickered back on during the second night, bringing blessed heat and the simple luxury of hot showers. The main roads were now passable, though plows hadn't yet reached their neighborhood street. Maya had called the hospital to explain her situation. To her relief, Dr. Rivera had been understanding.
Half our staff couldn't make it in either, she'd said.
Take the rest of the week. We've got coverage now. This unexpected time off had given Maya something she rarely had: days at home with Elijah. And now, with David and Lily, the house felt full in a way it never had before. That morning, Maya stood at the stove making pancakes while Elijah taught Lily how to fold paper airplanes at the kitchen table. David entered from the bathroom, his hair damp from a shower. "Something smells amazing," he said, coming to stand beside Maya at the stove. "Just pancakes," she replied, flipping a perfectly golden circle, but with the last of the real maple syrup Mrs. Chen sent over. David watched her work for a moment. "You know, I should try calling the towing company again today, see if they can get to our car." Maya felt that same unexpected pang she'd experienced when he'd first mentioned leaving. She pushed it aside. "Good idea. The roads are much better now." After breakfast, David made the call while Maya helped the children clean up. The towing company agreed to retrieve the car that afternoon and take it to the nearest garage for assessment. "Want to come along?" David asked after hanging up. They said they could give us a ride back. That's how the four of them ended up trudging through the snow to the main road, where they met the tow truck driver. He took them to where David's sedan still sat in the ditch, now almost completely buried in snow. Lily stared at the car, her eyes wide. "We were really stuck in there, Daddy?" David nodded, putting his arm around her shoulders. "We were. And then Maya found us." The driver whistled as he circled the vehicle. "You folks are lucky. Another night out here in that storm." He shook his head. "Let's get this dug out." It took nearly an hour to free the car enough for the tow truck to pull it out. The engine wouldn't start. No surprise after sitting in the extreme cold for days. The driver secured it to his truck and they all piled into the cab for the ride to Pete's auto repair on the edge of town. Pete, a burly man with a salt and pepper beard, greeted them at the garage. He spoke with David while examining the car, his expression growing more serious by the minute. "Alternators shot, water pumps cracked from the cold, and looks like you've got a transmission leak that was probably there before the storm," Pete listed off. "Not to mention all the electrical systems need checking after sitting in that much moisture." David's face fell. "How long to fix it all?" Pete scratched his beard. "Parts'll take at least a week to get here with all the shipping delays from the storm. Then maybe 3-4 days of work. A week and a half?" David looked stunned. "I'm supposed to start my new job in Denver next Monday. Could rent you a car," Pete suggested. Though with the storm damage, rental places are pretty cleaned out. On the drive back to Maya's house, courtesy of Pete's nephew who worked at the garage, David was quiet. When they arrived home, the children raced inside to warm up, but David lingered on the porch, his expression troubled. "Everything okay?" Maya asked, standing beside him in the cold. David ran a hand through his hair. "I don't know what to do. The moving company is delivering our stuff to the Denver apartment next week. I'm supposed to start work Monday, but without a car, could you call your new boss? Explain the situation?" "Maybe," David said, but he didn't sound convinced. "It's just not how I wanted to start, you know? First impressions and all that." Inside, Maya made hot chocolate while David made some calls. She could tell from his side of the conversations that things weren't going well. When he finally put his phone down, his expression was grim. No rental cars available anywhere in a 50-mile radius, and the bus to Denver isn't running until the interstate is fully cleared. "What about your job?" Maya asked. "My new boss said he understands, but I can hear the disappointment. They need me there for a project kickoff on Tuesday." He sighed. "I should have left Chicago earlier. Should have checked the weather more carefully." "You couldn't have known the storm would hit early," Maya reminded him. She hesitated, then added, "You know, you could stay here until your car is fixed. It's no trouble." The relief on David's face was immediate. "Are you sure? It's already been days and we've taken over your house." "I'm sure," Maya said firmly. "Besides, look at them." They both turned to watch the children, who were building an elaborate blanket fort that now spanned from the living room into the hallway. They'd be heartbroken to separate now. Maya added softly. That evening, after the children were asleep, David insisted on helping Maya with a leaky faucet she'd mentioned. As they worked together in the small bathroom, he handed her tools while she lay on her back peering up at the pipes under the sink. "You're pretty handy," David commented as Maya tightened a connection, stopping the drip. "Have to be," she replied, sliding out from under the sink. "Can't afford plumbers on a nurse's salary." David nodded toward the ceiling where a water stain spread across the corner. "That looks like it needs attention too," Maya sighed. The roof. Another thing on my to-do list. It was damaged in a storm last year. I patched it myself, but it's only a temporary fix. "I could take a look tomorrow," David offered. "I'm not a professional roofer, but I've done some work on my parents' house." The next day, while the children played board games, David climbed up to check Maya's roof. He came down with a worried expression. "It's worse than it looks from inside," he told her. "The water damage has weakened a section of the roof. Another heavy snow and you could have a real problem." Maya's heart sank. "I was afraid of that. But roof repairs cost thousands. What if—" David hesitated. "What if I fix it for you? I'd need to get materials, but I could do the labor. My car won't be ready for at least a week anyway." "David, I couldn't ask you to do that." "You didn't ask. I offered." His eyes met hers. "You saved our lives, Maya. Let me help you with this." After some persuasion, Maya agreed. The next morning, David borrowed Pete's nephew's truck to get supplies from the hardware store. For the next 3 days, he worked on the roof, with Maya helping when she wasn't cooking or playing with the children. They fell into an easy rhythm. Breakfast together. Then David would work on the roof while Maya cleaned or helped Elijah with his schoolwork, which his teacher had emailed over. They'd break for lunch as a group. Then sometimes Maya would climb up to help David while the children built snow sculptures in the yard below. At night, after the children were asleep, they'd talk for hours. David told her about growing up in Chicago, about meeting his late wife in college, about their early struggles and later happiness. Maya shared stories of her childhood in this very house, her parents' support when she got pregnant during nursing school, and her dreams of someday renovating the place. "You've made a good home here," David said one evening as they sat on the couch, mugs of tea warming their hands. "Elijah is lucky," Maya shook her head. "We're both lucky, but sometimes I worry it's not enough. Me working so much, him alone so often." "He doesn't seem alone to me," David observed. "He seems secure, confident. That comes from knowing you're there for him, even when you're not physically present." His words eased something in Maya's heart, a worry she carried constantly. On the 6th day after the storm, David's phone rang. It was Pete from the garage. "Good news," David announced after hanging up. "The car parts arrived early. Should be ready in 3 days." Maya forced a smile. "That's great." But later, as she folded laundry in her bedroom, she found herself blinking back unexpected tears. She'd known all along this arrangement was temporary, but somehow the thought of them leaving had become painful. That night, David finished the roof repairs. Maya climbed up to inspect his work while the sun set over the snow-covered neighborhood. "It's perfect," she said, running her hand over the new shingles. "I can't thank you enough. It was the least I could do." David moved to stand beside her. "Maya, Whatever he was going to say was interrupted by Elijah calling from below. "Mom, Lily got her mitten stuck in the door." They both laughed, the moment broken. As they climbed down to help Lily, their hands brushed, lingering just a second longer than necessary. Later that night, after another evening of games and stories with the children, David found Maya in the kitchen making lunches for the next day. "I called my new boss today," he said, leaning against the counter beside her. "Told him about the car, the storm, everything. What did he say?" Maya asked, spreading peanut butter on bread. "He was understanding, but—" David took a deep breath. "I also asked about remote work possibilities. At least for the first few weeks." Maya's hand stilled. "Remote work? But your apartment in Denver is just an apartment. Nothing's been delivered there yet. I could—" He hesitated, watching her face carefully. "I could stay in town a little longer, if that would be okay." Maya's heart raced. "Why would you do that?" David gently took the knife from her hand and set it down. "Because in less than a week, Lily has smiled more than she has in a year. Because Elijah and she have become inseparable. Because—" He moved closer. "Because I haven't felt this way since before I lost my wife. And it scares me, but I'm not ready to walk away from it. From you." Maya looked up at him, seeing the same mix of hope and fear she felt reflected in his eyes. "I'm scared too," she admitted. "This happened so fast." "I know." David's hand found hers. "We could slow down. I could find a place in town, work remotely for a few weeks, see where this goes. No pressure, and if it doesn't work out, then I go to Denver as planned. But at least we would have tried." Maya looked at their joined hands, then back at his face. "I'd like that," she said softly. "To try." His smile was like sunshine breaking through clouds. Outside, the snow continued to melt under clear skies, revealing the first hints of the road that had brought them together. Spring came to the small Colorado town, melting the last piles of snow that had lingered in shady corners since the Great Blizzard. 3 months had passed since that fateful night when Maya had found David and Lily stranded in the storm. Outside Maya's house, the front yard was alive with the sounds of children playing. Elijah and Lily chased each other through newly green grass, their laughter carrying on the warm breeze. "Don't go in the street," Maya called from the porch where she sat with a cup of coffee, watching them play. The screen door opened and David stepped out to join her, 2 muffins in hand. "Fresh from the oven," he said, offering her one. Maya took it gratefully, breathing in the cinnamon scent. So much had changed in 3 months, yet in some ways, it felt as though they'd always been this way. After the blizzard, David had found a small apartment in town and began working remotely for his Denver company. What had started as a temporary arrangement became more permanent when his boss, impressed with his work, agreed to let him stay remote indefinitely with just occasional trips to Denver. At first, they had taken things slowly. Weekend dinners, movie nights with the kids, walks in the park as the weather improved. Lily spent time at Maya's while David worked, becoming like a sister to Elijah. The children's bond had only strengthened with time. "I talked to Pete this morning," David said, settling into the chair beside Maya. "He found that part for your washing machine. Says he can install it tomorrow." Maya nodded. The old washing machine had been on its last legs for months. Before David, she would have struggled to fix it herself or scrape together money for a repair person. Now she had someone to share these burdens with. "Have you thought more about summer?" David asked, watching the children play tag around the old oak tree. Summer loomed ahead with its childcare challenges. Maya had always cobbled together arrangements, a patchwork of day camps, neighbors, and bringing Elijah to work when nothing else was available. "I looked into that day camp at the community center," Maya replied. "It's affordable and they could both go." David nodded, but his expression remained thoughtful. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the kind that comes from knowing someone deeply in a short time. "I've been thinking," David finally said. "My lease is up next month." Maya's heart quickened. They'd talked around this topic for weeks without directly addressing it. "Oh, it seems silly, doesn't it? I'm here most of the time anyway. We're constantly shuttling kids between 2 places. Paying rent when—" He trailed off, looking at her uncertainly. "When what?" Maya asked softly, though she knew what he was suggesting. David turned to face her fully. "When we could be together. Properly together, I mean. The 4 of us." Despite expecting this conversation, Maya felt a flutter of anxiety. "That's a big step." "I know." David reached for her hand. "And if you're not ready, I understand." "We can wait." Maya looked at their intertwined fingers, then at the children playing in the yard. The past 3 months had been the happiest she could remember since before Elijah was born. David brought a steadiness to her life, a partnership she hadn't realized she was missing. "It's not that I'm not ready," she said carefully. "It's just, my life before you was so different. I made all the decisions, handled everything alone. Sharing that is still new to me." "It's new to me too," David admitted. "After Anna died, I never thought I'd find this again." He squeezed her hand. "But we're good together, Maya, all 4 of us." That evening, after David and Lily had gone home to their apartment, Maya sat with Elijah at bedtime. "Honey, I want to ask you something important," she said, perching on the edge of his bed. "How would you feel if David and Lily came to live with us? All the time, not just visits." Elijah's eyes widened. "Like forever?" "Well, that's the idea. If it works out for everyone, would Lily be like my sister?" Maya smiled. "Something like that, yes." Elijah considered this seriously, his young face thoughtful. "Would David be like my dad?" The question caught Maya off guard. Elijah rarely spoke about his father, who had made no attempt to contact them in years. "He wouldn't replace your dad," Maya said carefully. But he would be an important grown-up in your life. Someone who cares about you very much. Elijah nodded, seeming satisfied. I think it would be good. Lily gets scared at night sometimes, and I could help her not be afraid. And David makes you smile a lot. Maya hugged him tightly, blinking back sudden tears. He does make me smile, doesn't he? 2 weeks later, Maya stood in her kitchen, surrounded by moving boxes. David and Lily's belongings were gradually finding homes among hers and Elijah's. Books mingling on shelves, clothes hanging side by side in closets, toys sharing bins and baskets. The process hadn't been without challenges. There had been tearful moments when Lily missed her mother acutely in the midst of another big change. Elijah had occasional bursts of possessiveness over his space and toys. Even Maya and David had their adjustments, learning each other's habits and quirks in closer proximity. But for every difficult moment, there were a dozen that confirmed they'd made the right choice. Like now, as David carried in the last box from his car, setting it down with a dramatic groan that made everyone laugh. That's the last of it, he announced. Officially moved in. To celebrate, they had a picnic dinner in the backyard, spreading a blanket under the oak tree. As they ate sandwiches and fruit, they talked about their plans for the summer. Camping trips, bike rides, lazy days at the community pool. We should plant a garden, Lily suggested, pointing to the sunny spot along the fence. My mom always had tomatoes and peppers. That's a great idea, Maya said, noting how Lily could now mention her mother without the crushing sadness of earlier months. We could start tomorrow. After the children went to bed that night, Maya and David sat on the porch swing, his arm around her shoulders as darkness settled over the neighborhood. When I skidded off that road in the blizzard, David said quietly, I thought it was the worst luck. Another blow after losing Anna, another challenge for Lily. Maya leaned against him, remembering the night she'd found them. I was so angry about having to go out in that storm. Worried about leaving Elijah, and now look at us. David's voice held a note of wonder. If you hadn't driven by exactly when you did, or if the storm had hit a day later as predicted. David pressed a kiss to her temple. I don't normally believe in fate, but sometimes I wonder. A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the creaking of the swing and distant night sounds. I got a call from the hospital today, Maya said after a while. They're offering me a position in the new pediatric unit, better hours, more predictable schedule, and they'll help pay for my nurse practitioner courses. Maya, that's wonderful. David turned to look at her. You've wanted that for so long, she nodded, still amazed by the opportunity. Before I couldn't have taken it. The schedule juggling with Elijah would have been impossible. But now, with you here, we're a team, David said simply. That's what this is all about. 1 year to the day after the blizzard, they gathered in Maya's, now their, backyard with friends and family. White chairs were arranged in rows and an arch of flowers stood at the front. Mrs. Chen sat in the front row, beaming with pride. Pete from the garage and his wife chatted with Maya's colleagues from the hospital. David's parents, who had driven from Chicago to meet the woman who had saved their son and granddaughter, helped arrange food on tables. Elijah and Lily stood together at the front, dressed in their best clothes, holding small baskets of flower petals. They had taken their roles as ring bearer and flower girl with utmost seriousness, practicing for weeks. When Maya walked out of the house in her simple white dress, David's face lit up in a way that made her heart swell. As she joined him under the arch, he whispered, You look beautiful. The ceremony was short and sweet. They exchanged vows they had written themselves. Promises not just to each other but to their children as well. Not every love story starts with a rescue in a blizzard, David said, his voice carrying across the quiet yard. But ours did. You saved us in more ways than you know. Maya squeezed his hands. We saved each other. When they were pronounced husband and wife, Elijah and Lily cheered the loudest. As David kissed his new wife, Lily threw her remaining flower petals over them, and Elijah jumped up and down with excitement. Later, as music played and their guests enjoyed cake, David pulled Maya into a dance on the makeshift floor they'd created on the lawn. Are you happy? He asked, spinning her gently under his arm. Maya looked around at their home, at the children playing with friends, at the life they'd built from the most unexpected beginning. Happier than I ever thought possible, she replied, and as they danced under the same sky that had once brought a dangerous blizzard, She knew that sometimes the worst storms brought the greatest gifts.